welcome to the November 15th edition of the Zooch and Wilde podcast. We got a great show talking about the spectrum of QB play that we saw last week and kind of throughout this season. Talking about our reaction to the new playoff rankings that dropped. Then we got a big game tomorrow, Tennessee versus Georgia, and what's shaking out to be a playoff eliminator game, as well as some teams that are going to be that we think are on upset alert. But before we talk about any of that, wanted to remind everyone that you can still use the code ZNW15 for 15% off all Settle Down merch. Please get some merch. Use the code. It is awesome. I say it every week. I have a shirt, and Zuch has a shirt. A lot of people I know have the shirt. Get the shirt, please. They're sweet, and it helps support the channel directly. You know who's not supporting his team very well right now?
Carson Beck.
Carson Beck. Carson Beck, and he is kind of the forefront of what is this uneasy kind of QB play that kind of really peaked its way to, I think, a lot of people this last week. And whether it was Carson Beck or Cam Ward, I mean, those are the two that stuck out big. But it's kind of been all over the place, QB play, I will say.
Yeah, and I don't even. My thing with Carson Beck is last week, I think it was more of a Georgia couldn't block at all.
Yeah.
I didn't even think he really played, given the circumstances, all that bad. He had a couple fumbles and that sort of thing. He had the one interception, but I don't like even the fumbles were towards the end of the game, and they were almost like, all right, well, Ole Miss's D-line has been getting home all day, and now they know you're passing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think there's too much he could do, but at the same time, all year long, and I think part of it too, and I know a lot of people have been saying this the past couple of weeks, oh, they missed Ladd McConkey, they missed Brock Bowers. Yeah, I agree, but who they miss more than them, and I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, is that the offensive coordinator who's at the Ravens now, Todd Monken. That's his name.
Monken. Yeah, Todd Monken.
Yeah,
I mean, he was solid.
He's made the Ravens offense it's been pretty good since Lamar Jackson got there, but now it's almost at another level. And obviously, I'm not saying Kirby Smart's not a good coach or anything like that. Georgia's still, I think, a pretty good team. But when you lose, especially Brock Bowers, I sometimes think people forget how much of a safety blanket a guy like Brock Bowers can be, because he's virtually unguardable. Especially in the college game, that dude was almost unstoppable. So when you lose someone like him, you lose a Ladd McConkey, who's Ladd McConkey's not Brock Bowers. Ladd McConkey was really good though. And have a newer offensive coordinator that can kind of set you up for failure.
A little bit.
I think that has been kind of the issue with Carson Beck. And like I said, I don't think he played all that terribly last week, but he also hasn't taken over any games, and it's been
he hasn't taken over. And I think that's where people were hoping to see that kind of next step this year. Is that can you start taking over games? I think a lot of guys who you've been hoping to take the step, Cam Ward did play terribly this week, but I mean, we'll talk about him in a little bit, but I want to stay on this Georgia Ole Miss game and go to the opposite quarterback. I said last week on the show that Jackson Dart needed to step up. He has been looking for a game where he can finish and get the job done. And he did. He did. It wasn't perfect at times, but he played good. Whether it was perfect, what I would say, man, it was pouring rain, big game. He did what he had to do to win. And now, in this, I mean, the same thing with Shador. Shador played, although he had a very, very good game against Texas Tech. And Jackson Dart and Shador Sanders have both put their teams in position to compete for a playoff spot. And in Ole Miss's case, Jackson Dart essentially allowed them now to control their own destiny in their playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, I felt bad. You couldn't have had a worse start. Like, you come out, I said last week, like, oh, the Ole Miss offensive line kind of worries me. There's pressure on the first 3 plays, the interception. He's hurt. Like, you're like wondering, like, oh God, like, is it? For a second, I thought he had done something because I was watching it at a bar, so you couldn't really hear like what Greg McElroy was saying, which I'll have words on Greg McElroy later when I.
Okay, I'm not the most in shape guy. I like to think I'm in shape, you know. I'm not obese. I'm not fat. Greg McElroy, he's starting to get a little bit of. I want to be nice because this goes on the internet, and I know people get older. Is he starting to get a little bit of a turkey gizzard? And the look a little tight, man. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but getting a little large.
It's from doing all the SEC games and eating all the good food.
Dude, he's really putting. He is putting the Mick in McElroy right now. Definitely, the McNugget Roy.
But yeah, like that. So that happens. I'm like, oh, I thought he might have done something to his Achilles, based on like the replay they were showing, and I was like, it's pouring down rain. Like, stuff just happens. Like, that's gonna suck. And then Austin Simmons comes in, and like, I follow Ole Miss in recruiting. I'm like, oh, like, I think Austin Simmons is going to be a good quarterback, but that's a huge spot to come into. It's like the biggest game of your season, the biggest game of your coach's career. And I was telling Cody at the bar, I was like, I don't know if they'll go down and score, but like, he's a lefty. Like, maybe it'll throw Georgia off a little bit, because it is a little bit different when a lefty comes in. You're like, oh, like, just different angles and stuff the quarterback can throw to. It's a little bit more weird. And he goes like 6 of 7. I was like, geez, like, this dude just like went down the field.
Good.
And a big part of that was they trusted him. Like, let him throw the ball. Like, on that 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, they like he threw it in between like 3 defenders, and I was like, that's a big like thing to say. Oh, like, we're gonna trust this redshirt freshman who's never really played, especially in like meaningful minutes. But sure enough, Jackson Dart came back and looked overall relatively good. Like, that's the thing, is like, he didn't need to come in and throw for 400 yards. Like, it was like the past couple of weeks, and and people can go back and look at the show. I've been saying, oh, I think the best part about Ole Miss might be their defensive line. Their defensive line they're
good. They looked
filthy. Like,
the full range of their dynamicness, if that's even a word, was on display. Being able to blitz, being able to rush the passer with 4, which is an extremely rare thing in college football, to be able to rush the passer with 4. And Ole Miss, they've played themselves into controlling their own destiny, just with the way the losses have gone in the SEC. And we'll talk a little bit more about some more doomsday scenarios in that conference. But Ole Miss, they looked really good. But other quarterbacks, this was it was a coming out party. I think last thing we'll kind of touch on in this segment is the Cam Ward Heisman hype has dipped a little, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that a lot of what made Cam Ward the awesome Heisman candidate was his ability to just seemingly come back from anything that, like, he was the great masker for that Miami team. And, I called it this week. I was like, Georgia Tech, I remember texting a friend. I mean, you guys can believe me or not. I texted my friend Kevin, shout out Kevin. I said, watch out for this Georgia Tech game, because Georgia Tech's going to play well. Cody's favorite player in the country plays for Georgia Tech. The linebacker, Kevin, number 44.
Specifically, shout out to Kevin, because he is one of the few people in my life who has just said something that, like, we're having like a conversation and just said something out of nowhere that made me bust out laughing. And that name just reminded me of it. It was one of the funniest things I've ever heard. It was like the most chill way to say something I've ever heard, but it was applying for jobs and I'm going to get a haircut, I got to go corporate. It's the funniest thing I ever heard when somebody was talking about applying for jobs.
No,
So
shout
shout
out
out
Kevin.
Kevin.
We'll have to get him on the pod soon. He's watching ball. Actually, his Twitter algorithm is just starting to get into the burnerverse. That should tell you
Okay.
how much we've been sharing pictures. But yeah, Cam Ward looked bad. Not even bad. No, he looked bad. And Shador looked good.
Well, speaking of
Shador looked really good.
him, it is time, and I get why they get the hate and stuff. You have no choice, even if you're a hater of Deion Sanders and Colorado and whatever, to give them their flowers. Shore
Oh,
Sanders is really good. Like, you can hate him, say he's full of himself, blah, blah, blah. Fine, I get it. The fact that they went from 1-11 to 4-8 to legitimately, like, probably what, the second favorite in the Big 12? I have no idea what the odds
yeah.
are, but they're the only team they could possibly be behind would be BYU and maybe Kansas State. But they like he's made it work, and like maybe they lose out and go 7-6, but I don't think that's going to happen. And any other coach in football who inherited a 1-11 team and went 4-8, and then possibly like might win their conference championship would be the coach of the year. Plain and simple.
No, I
like
mean,
that's
it's just unfortunate that he happens to be coaching the same year that Kurt Signetti could get an at-large playoff bid with Indiana. But I think two things can be true with Deion in Colorado. You have to give them their props. And I don't think we both fully bought into the hate. I know I didn't. You were more in on Deion this year than I was. I didn't fully buy into the hate though. I believed in what Deion was building. I thought he was going to get to about 8 wins. So I guess my prediction is still in play. Build off that. And two things can be true. You can not like the way they do things. You can, because you do think they can come across as braggadocious and very arrogant. However, you also have to acknowledge that he has essentially built up a program from scratch and done something at Colorado that hasn't been done really since the 90s, which is make them nationally relevant. And if I don't know if you follow the recruiting trail at all, but is it Julian Lewis? It's whatever 5-star quarterback that just reclassified. Word on the street is that he might flip from US. I forget his name. Is it Julian Lewis? I really hope it's Julian Lewis, or else I'm just saying some random kid's poor name. But he could flip from USC to Colorado, which would also like totally wipe out all of the Deion's just gonna leave after his kid gets drafted haters.
Yeah,
So
no, he's done a good
props to what
job.
Deion's doing. Whether I think his players are arrogant or not, who cares? Like
Right.
the talk they talk. It's the classic old man coach saying. They talk with their pads on the field. Like all the other talk, it gets decided on the field, and on the field, the product has been really good for Colorado this year.
Yes, it has. I mean, the Nebraska loss was bad, but they kind of got boned in that Kansas State loss with the no PI. I watched into that game. I think it was maybe the week before Halloween. It was around Halloween, like week of Halloween, week before one of them, and it was like a bad call, like towards the end of that game. But even still, like Kansas State 7-2, so they have proved a lot of people wrong. But then again, I don't think those people ever thought they were gonna. I think they just like to hate on them and would not even, say like they're gonna be good regardless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the topic of Colorado, they are now in a position to potentially play for a playoff spot, and the new playoff rankings dropped. A lot of people are mad. A lot of people are mad, but can I tell you something that's going to make a lot of people upset?
What's
and
that?
this could be a clip. I don't think Georgia deserves to be in the 12 team if it ended tomorrow.
Oh, I agree with that.
They've looked sluggish all year, and for the people who are like, oh man, like SEC bias, look, I don't think Penn State should be ranked that high either. I'm probably more in on BYU being ranked high, team like Tennessee being ranked high, team like I mean, we hate on them. Alabama being ranked higher than a Penn State, but like
So
you cannot look at me in a
here,
straight face and tell me that Georgia is more deserving than because it has to be 11 teams because that Boise State and Army are pretty much battling for that last spot. So there's no way you can tell me that Georgia deserves it more than those top 11.
here's the thing about, and I'll kind of group all these teams in together. To me, Georgia, Penn State, like a little bit, but they are undefeated, so not as much as those two. Indiana and Texas. So I was going through the past couple of days, just like because I like, and I don't like get mad really at the college football playoff rankings. Like it, like a thing that doesn't make any sense to me is how Miami is really ahead of SMU when they each have one loss, and SMU's one loss is about 1,000 times better than Miami's. Little stuff like that, it didn't really bother me. I'm like, all right, like it doesn't make too much sense, but that's one of the ones that will work itself out, so it doesn't really matter. But when I look at those teams I mentioned before, Georgia does have the win over Texas, which is that's a big win, and they have their two losses are both to teams in the college football playoff. So, should Georgia win out, right? If Georgia finishes 10-2, they'll be in. There's no doubt in my mind that 10-2 Georgia's going to be in the playoff.
Over who though? Who gets bumped if the doomsday scenario happens?
If like let's say Georgia wins out, they're 10-2. I think Tennessee is out probably. I think Tennessee is probably out, but I don't know that if Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee all finish 10-2,
Texas out.
I think it would be A&M and LSU and LSU, like all things like you beat all the bad teams you play, whatever. I think it would be LSU and A&M in the SEC championship game. Which in that case, if A&M won, LSU's not getting in with 4 losses. Like period. Like that's impossible.
Then you have to let in A&M though because you can't allow this.
But I like out of all those teams, if Indiana's 11-1, Georgia's 10-2, Tennessee's 10-2, Ole Miss is 10-2, Alabama's 10-2, and Texas is 10-2. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that Texas should be in over any of those other 10-2 teams. Who's their best win? It's either Vanderbilt or Colorado State. I sent you
that is not good
picture. Yep. They don't have, if Texas doesn't beat A&M, they have nothing even close to a signature win. I'm sorry, Colorado State is not a signature win, and Vanderbilt is better this year, but they're going to be like 7-5.
They haven't played anyone. Texas, they haven't played anyone, and it's going to get interesting down the stretch. Another thing that I found super interesting is that the Boise State to top 4 playoff ranking is closer and closer to becoming a reality now. If Boise State wins out like they continue to do, they are probably going to sit somewhere between 13 and 11 in the true ranking status. Correct? Maybe 14 and 10 if you want to get a little bit bigger. Let's say SMU makes it to the ACC championship. Maybe they lose 2 games, but they make it to the ACC championship and win the ACC. Let's say BYU loses and Colorado wins and Boise, like there could be some absolute chaos. And I hope it works out, but something tells me it's not going to. And like all college football, see, here's the thing college football fans need to realize. People have been bitching and moaning about conferences and national championships since the inception of the sport. You could make a 50-team playoff, and there'd still be teams who are 52 and 53 saying, "Oh man, we deserve to get in." Are you kidding me? Like San Jose State, or I don't want to choose San Jose State. I'll choose Illinois. Would be like, "Oh, we deserve to get in for that 25th spot," or something like that. There's always going to be people complaining.
And it's kind of like you said earlier, 2 things can be true. And I think sometimes Group of 5 fans fall into the trap of having to swing at everything that like a Power 5 fan will throw at them. You can like if Boise State finishes 12-1, you can say they're a really good team. I think they're a pretty good team. That can be true. I do not necessarily think a 12-1 Boise State team should be ranked higher than like an 11-2 Tennessee. I think it is abundantly clear that Tennessee plays a way harder schedule than Boise State. I don't like that's just you're lying if you say that that's not the case. And that's fine if you want to say, oh, well, Boise State had more wins. That's fine. But to completely ignore the differences between like the Big Ten and the SEC and the Mountain West or the American is asinine. You know that there's a difference. You know in your heart that if Boise State or Army was in the SEC, they would probably, like everyone else besides Texas, have a couple losses. That's just the truth. Like when you are like, I'll pull, like I just pulled up LSU. Their past few weeks have been Ole Miss, Arkansas, A&M, Alabama. There's a big difference between that and San Diego State, Nevada, San Jose State, and Utah State. Just is. But with that being said, if I was the group of 5 team, I would rather either be the 12 seed or get that 4 seed. I would not want to be like I do not. If I was a Boise State fan, I would not want to get in that like middle of the pack where you have to play like an Ole Miss because that is you're like if you watch those two teams play or a Tennessee because they have a great defensive line too. You do not want to like you want kind of a good matchup in the first round, and I don't necessarily know that Boise. I think Boise State would match up way better as like an 11 or a 12 playing Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State than they would as like a 8 seed, 7 or 8 or whatever, and playing a team like Tennessee or Ole Miss that has a dominant defensive line that you just aren't like. And I like Penn State and Indiana, maybe not as much Indiana, but Penn State probably has a good defensive line too, but it's not at the level of
Also, Happy Valley playoff just should scare the shit out of any G5 team that like goes in there. Like, it's just that's gonna be a shit show. Like anything.
Right. So it's like you, like I said, if I was Boise State, I would not be too mad at it looking more and more like the ACC. Like if SMU or Miami finishes with 1 loss, they're gonna jump ahead. Like if SMU wins out, they're jumping ahead of Boise State. That it's going to happen. Like they would have the win over Miami. They're gonna jump. BYU wins out, they're gonna stay ahead of them. Well, like maybe Colorado would. I'm not 100% sold that they would.
I don't know. But that Nebraska loss does look just so bad. It looks so bad.
I don't necessarily think. Yeah, that's appearing on the screen. But yeah, like if you and like this is all about rankings and stuff. Don't be mad if you're the 12 seed because that might be a better matchup. I understand that it looks like the worst matchup because you're playing a 5 seed. But if you get, I don't know, like teams like personally to me, as like a BSU fan, I think Oregon looks way more beatable than Ole Miss or Tennessee right now.
I do too. But hey, time will tell.
And there's a lot that goes into it. Like Ole Miss and Tennessee each have like 3 6'6" guys on that offensive line. Maddox Madsen is like 5'9". That kind of stuff matters. Like I think Boise State could win. I think they would have a far better chance beating Indiana, Oregon, someone like that. So I guess time will tell.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's playoff rankings. We shall see. The only other thing I wanted to touch on over this last weekend was what the hell was that Utah AD doing? that seemed like the biggest weenie move of all time. Honestly, like I will briefly touch. Like that was a weenie move.
Yeah, that was the letting like your emotions play way too much into something. Like I get you would be pissed. I would have been pissed too if I was a Utah fan. That was really bad. That call, it legitimately like you can say like that cost us the game. Like it did. But even like what I always hate about these people is they do stuff like that and then immediately come out and apologize instead of just being like, you know what, I was heated. I was kind of pissed at the call. I hate BYU. They're our arch rival. Just be truthful about it. Like, don't do the whole "I saw our kids were hurt." No, you legitimately were screaming at people before you got in the locker room. So you were pissed about the bad call. Just call it for what it is. That like it's refreshing when you have like watching Kirby Smart. Like it was refreshing. Like Kirby Smart is refreshing because he's just honest about.
Called that kid an idiot, a stupid idiot.
The funniest moment, that was the most shocking thing I've seen this year, is that Georgia kid just like jumping up and down with the Ole Miss. I was like, is that a real kid or is that like someone dressed up? Is like almost looks like perfectly dressed up as a Georgia player. That was,
dude, I thought,
you know,
the tweet that brought it up was funny because they claimed that Lane Kiffin had sleeper agents in Athens getting intel information. That's what the burners were saying. But it turns out it was just a kid celebrating with an old high school classmate who happened to go to Ole Miss.
It looked so bad. Like when you saw that, you even said like, I need to dig deeper into this because it was so shocking. I was like, what in the hell is going, like, why is this guy just like jumping up and down with these? It was odd, but like, and that's what I mean though. It's like Kirby Smart's refreshing because he's honest, because he was like, yeah, he's an idiot. What an idiot. And then the next day he's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have called him an idiot. Like he's a good kid. But he's being truthful. Like in the moment, he's like, yeah, he was an idiot. And then afterwards, he probably got home and was like, probably like he's a young kid. Like I think he's a walk-on. That dude does not look like he is even in.
I don't know if he was. He went to Buford. He went to Buford in Georgia, and he's a transfer from Alabama. And I know Buford's like one of the top schools in Georgia. Transfer from Alabama, so this kid might be on scholarship. So hey, we'll see. Maybe he'll be a beast or something, but time will tell. Time will tell. All right. Well, Zooch, anything else from last weekend? If not, we are going to be moving into.
Not the Big Ten is just boring and sucks. Like you have the Michigan, Indiana game going on, and legitimately no one's even paying attention to it because of it's just boring. Like what was the final? Like 20-15.
Yeah.
It's just so it's the most boring conference in the country, Power 4 wise. Like the Big 12 is way more exciting. SEC is more exciting. The ACC is like more exciting.
The ACC is shit, but it is just more exciting. Like it's terrible, but it's good terrible.
And that's kind of the issue, is like maybe the top SEC teams aren't as good this year. I'll listen to that argument. But legitimately, you have Oregon, and it's 4 teams, so it's not bad. But in a 20-team league, you have Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, Penn State. The rest of that conference is really bad. Like really, there's no like LSU or South Carolina that you're like, oh, like yeah, they're not a national championship contender, but they're not an easy out. Like you have Minnesota. So
yeah. All right. Well, that was a good talk. Now that was a good recap. Lot recap. I totally forgot about that Utah thing. I'm glad we added that in at the last second. But we're going to be moving on to our weekly segment, The List, where we find funny memes and stuff and tweets from the Burnerverse and other places on Twitter and read them off. As always, we neither support nor condone these messages and tweets, but we are just reporting the news as an unbiased source. I went first last week. So Zooch, the floor is yours.
We had a couple. Number one was from High Top Dave, who over the weekend, and you should never do this, Jack Del Rio was arrested for a DUI and had to resign from Wisconsin's coaching staff. And he just put a picture of Jack Del Rio doing like the fist raise with the Georgia logo in the background. And it said hired. So that was from High Top Dave. Then we had Cumwiser. Interesting name. He tweeted, Donald Trump announces that Henry Ruggs III to be named the head of the Department of Transportation and Safety. But you are going to have people looking at your tweets, buddy.
Yeah. Get ready to learn FBI, buddy.
He is. And it wasn't like there wasn't a ton this week, but the Jack Del Rio one and new people in the cabinet for the president, that brought some people out. We had Richard G. West, who said that the deputy police chief is going to be the guest picker for Georgia and Tennessee this weekend in Athens.
All that.
So a lot of like, and then overall, they see quarterbacks have got to stop with the DMs to the females.
We have to talk about that. That was going to be my meme matchup. So don't worry. We'll talk about that in the meme matchup. That's a real touch on these SEC quarterback DMs. But yeah,
my last one, and he has had quite a few this year. This coach has been mentioned. It was from John is Minty. I live in constant fear that Trump will deport Mike Bobo, an illegal immigrant with ties to radical Islam who lives in Athens, Georgia, and spends much of his time at the Butts Mehir Heritage Hall.
Georgia fan, they need to stop. Mike Bobo is probably like the number one most hated man in the state of Georgia right now. This guy cannot catch a break. Okay, those were some good ones. So I have 3 this week. And the first one comes from a classic account, classic big content guy, BCG, our man. And it reads, Kirby Smart, hey, it's a big game today. Be smart with the football and trust your reads, Carson. And then it says Carson Beck, and it's just a picture of a goat. It's just a picture of a goat with the wide eye, just mean. The second one, and this one comes from an all-time username at Peter Millar Star, and tweeted out, "You ruined my life, Shedeur Sanders." And it may or may not be a picture of him holding what may be an illegal drug, because Shedeur Sanders has turned him to narcotics after beating his precious Texas Tech Rebels. And the last one, which is the biggest one, and this guy needs to get his account banned for this, Zach. And it comes from at NFL Muskrat, and it's Trump needs to deport Diego Pavia's mom immediately. ... to my bedroom. Jail.
Yeah,
jail.
Luckily, like the election rhetoric is gonna die down a little bit. After we'll be a couple weeks after it, almost going into Saturday, and Diego Pavia has been at the end of a few tweets that we need to stop. I'll just put it that way.
Like I always say, we neither condone nor support these tweets. We present them to you because these tweets are happening, and these people are what drive college football, whether we like it or not.
There was one more. It's not. I'm lying. It is funny. And it'll be interesting. I followed this guy because I want to see what he tweets this weekend. At Balls on Top said, if Livy Dunn brushed up against Lee Corso, that might be enough to put him away for good.
Winner of the week. No. I always say we don't support or condone. That is in contention for tweet of the year. That's funny. Our guy Lee, I'm glad he's liking game day, man, because I don't know. I just want him to spend some time with his kids. He's a legend. I don't want to see him just get worked to death, to be honest. But if he wants to do it, I guess, hey, You do you, Lee. We love you. All right, Zooch. Let's move on to the big game tomorrow. Tennessee, Georgia. Playoff eliminator game. This is and it's so strange to think Tennessee has played an amazing year and they're gonna go, man, if we lose to a field goal to Georgia, you're telling me like we no longer control our own destiny for the playoff? It's just the way it is this year,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, well, there is gonna be a team out there, and they will have a right to gripe a little bit, but like the way things are right now, there's probably going to be a 10-2 team on the outside looking in from the SEC,
Mm-hmm.
and I hear their criticisms and stuff like that, but if Tennessee were to lose, if Tennessee loses to Georgia, they're going to be they're going to be behind Ole Miss and they're going to be behind Georgia. So I just don't see how there's nothing that they would be able to do to jump those teams unless one of those teams loses again. That's why I think at Tennessee it's a playoff eliminate. Like for Georgia, it'd be the third loss. They're not making it, but for Tennessee, like some weird stuff could happen, obviously, and they could get in. Like if Ole Miss lost to Florida or Mississippi State or Georgia Tech beats Georgia, Auburn beats Alabama, whatever. I'm not saying that can't happen, but if like favorites play out, they're just not like would be zero reason for them to jump Georgia, and there really wouldn't be a reason for them to jump Ole Miss.
No,
like
there wouldn't.
There's no and I like it's there's no oh my god, what is that mathematic equation that people do? I can't think of it. Where they translate transitive property. Like it only is going to go so far. And the SEC, like you can be like, oh yeah, well we beat Alabama, who beat Georgia, but Ole Miss beat Georgia, and Georgia beat us. And if you're Alabama, you can be like, well, if we beat Georgia, but Georgia lost, like it's just not like it's just going to be a giant like circle around.
No, it's going to be a giant poop shoot.
And the issue with Tennessee is they will have the latest loss to a good team. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, and it's going to stick in the vote. I do like an interesting discourse that's coming out of all this chaos in the SEC, and that is the SEC needs to add one more game to their conference schedule, like eliminate like the BS game that like Alabama's playing Mercer tomorrow. So like eliminating that BS game, adding another conference game on the schedule. I mean, you're seeing now. I mean, I think they should. What's going to come down to is that Oh, I was going to say Nico.
Just have. I think we're lagging.
We are lagging a little bit, but we're going to we are going to punch through it.
Just go to a 10-game schedule, and at the end of the season, if there's a bunch of teams tied, whoever's highest in the rankings goes to the SEC championship. No more of this like strength of schedule between common like you make it way too confusing. Just make it simple. You don't need to make it overly confusing. 9-game schedule. You wouldn't have this probably, and I mean you wouldn't. It would be impossible. But anyway, yes, Nico, the concussion man. Will he play?
Mean, but if Nico plays, that's the key to this game. Is Nico, and man, I mean the SEC. It's been the conference of quarterbacks this year. It really has the conference of quarterbacks, and we're still waiting on Carson Beck. Man, this is a guy who at the beginning of the year, that second half versus Clemson, he was the number 1 QB in the country in terms of getting drafted. Now there's some people saying that he might not even get taken in the 3rd round, Zooch. Are we lagging? Hello? Technical difficulties. If so, we will cut this segment out.
It's my Wi-Fi. I don't know if it's because it's storming.
All right. We will cut out I'm gonna put in my notes. Cut out 39-minute mark. All right. Start again talking about Nico. Sorry, we just had technical Can you hear me? Let me see. All right. We good?
Hold on. Yeah, we can. I'm just on my hotspot now, so it might lag a little bit, but we're almost done.
No,
I don't know
I'm
what's going on.
also no, it's also my end too because my phone it says SOS right now. So it's all this is like a double whammy. All right, we're just gonna put in notes. Cut out 39-minute mark
Are we under
into what is
attack?
it? 41-min mark. All right. That just tells us that we need to be concise with our Nico talk. All right. Sorry about that. We were having technical difficulties, but to end up the Tennessee Georgia segment, Zooch, who do you think is going to win and why?
I personally think Georgia is going to win this one, and it's because I think, and it's the state of college football. I think people are down on Georgia, and I don't think you need to be down on Georgia. I think they ran into a hot Ole Miss team. Granted, I still have questions about Texas, but that's a good win. They played bad in the first half against Alabama, but they still destroyed Clemson. It's still the team who has only lost to one team outside of Alabama in the past 4 years. That.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They might not be as strong. I understand that. I'll hear people out on that, but it's still a very, very good team with the best coach in the sport, who is gonna light a fire under those guys. I watched the game the other day. Kirby Smart wasn't belligerent or anything like that. He was, relatively calm through most of it. And I think it's because he knew, despite what other people said, Ole Miss is a pretty good team. You're playing them on the road. It's raining. You have your own struggles. They had to have that win. It happens sometimes. It's not that he's going to let that be an excuse for them not winning, but I still trust Georgia personally. I think Georgia is going to be in the playoff. Tennessee, I don't think is a bad team. I think at 10-2, Tennessee probably deserves to be in the playoff too, but that's not how things work out. It is nothing against me picking Georgia has nothing to do with thinking Tennessee is a bad team. I just think going into Athens and you're still playing a great coach, you might lose it and you might 10-2 is not bad. It's just not.
No, I agree. And I also think Georgia's going to win this game for the same reasons that you said. I think giving Kirby a little bit of ammunition to kind of be down on Georgia. We've seen Georgia down like this before versus Texas. Remember when everyone was down on them going into the Texas game? They came out and they kicked ass. And I expect them to do the same thing versus the other UT. I don't think Tennessee knows what's coming. I think this is a pissed off Georgia team that's going to be playing essentially for their life. So that's why I have Georgia in this game, and I'm excited. I'm really excited for it. And Georgia's going to be good, but other than this Tennessee Georgia game, there's not really a ton of the premier matchups, I guess you could say. So what we're going to do next is we each have some teams that we think are going to be on upset alert and some games that we think you guys should keep an eye on. I guess let's just go back for back. So I have a couple, Zooch.
Yeah.
And so I have 3 teams I have on upset alert. The first team I have on upset alert is the BYU Cougars. Why do I have them on upset alert? 1, they just got a close win over Utah where they could be feeling mighty high coming off their rivals. 2, this is the late slate game. This is 7:15 at night. Things might get funky. Things always seems to get funky in Provo when it's nighttime. Thirdly, they're playing a Kansas team that looked way better last week than they've looked all year. That's and the BYU one is just off a gut feeling. Zooch, I'd love to hear your first team that you have on upset alert.
So mine is, and I think they have one kind of good win this year. It's a top 10 team they beat. But they've kind of been a team that's been simmering, like, a lot of people pick them like, oh, watch out for this. Like, watch out for these guys. They could ruin your season. They could ruin your season. And I still have a lot of questions about the team they're playing. So I'm going with Texas and Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
That's an early kickoff. It's a rivalry game. Like, I know a lot of people don't realize that it's a rivalry game because they were in different conferences for forever. But it is. And I mean, like, this is like I think Sam Pittman could use it, like almost going insane. I don't even know if it's true or not. I think he might end up getting another year, even if they finish 6-6. They should beat Louisiana Tech. We'll see on Missouri too. But I think he can kind of use this as like, fellas, if we win this game, I'm back. Like, I'll be back next year. And maybe the players hate Sam Pittman, and that doesn't work at all.
How could you hate Sam Pittman? It's Cody's favorite coach. Second favorite behind Kurt Signetti.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, I think there's some talent there for Arkansas. Now, there's been a couple points this season where their defense has let up stuff they haven't, and times that the offense hasn't looked that great. But there's also been times where you're like, dang, this Arkansas team's not terrible. I mean, they're not going to win the national championship, but
no, they've looked good at times.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, and Texas has not looked good. Like, I think people are a little bit blinded by Texas because they're Texas, but there's been quite a few times that you're like, oh, like, that's some bad turnovers by Quinn Ewers right there. Like, they aren't, like, their defense has given up a couple big plays here and there, and they haven't played that many good teams. The one good team they played, they got smoked, and that team had like 4 turnovers. Carson Beck threw like 3 or 4 interceptions. So
no, I agree.
Arkansas comes out and starts hot, and they could, like, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I think Texas needs to really be prepared for that game.
No, I agree. That's another one to watch. The second team I have on upset alert is my very own Boise State Broncos.
Yeah.
This is I think I saw on Twitter, I don't know who tweeted it. It could have been at a true gentleman, great account. But this is the trappiest game out of all the trap games. Yeah. It is like San Jose State. They're going to be playing in front of, look, I'm from the Bay Area. They're going to be playing in front of less than 3,000 San Jose State fans. I'm predicting this will be like a neutral site game, to be honest. It's in a daytime, which is weird for San Jose State. Usually they play at like butt crack
11 p.m.
Yeah, 11 p.m., like midnight essentially. It's a 4 p.m. San Jose start. It's at the same time slot essentially as your Tennessee, Georgia. And I just think it is what San Jose State does well is what Boise State has struggled with, is explosive plays on offense, and it is creating issues for Maddox Madsen. They play
creating turnovers, which Boise State has been prone to, which is why I was saying earlier you don't want to play Ole Miss or Tennessee because they will cause you to have turnovers.
So yeah, I have Boise State, and it's a great opportunity for them to step up. I've been saying all year, and anytime all my Boise State friends, they get like stressed out, and I'm like, look, if you think this team's a playoff team, like I believe they deserve to have they are the best group of 5 in the country. Playoff teams win these type of games. Playoff teams win that game against Nevada. Playoff teams win that game against UNLV. Playoff teams beat the crap out of a team like Utah State and Washington State. Like, if they lose this game, they don't deserve to be a playoff team. So that's the way I'm looking at it. That's the way Boise State should look at it. But they have to take San Jose State and Nick Nash, wide receiver, very good wide receiver, very seriously, or they could be in for some trouble. Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and based on how kind of the committee showed last week when they barely beat Nevada, if they were to lose, if they lost this game, I don't necessarily know that they would. I think some fans think like, oh, they could lose, and like if they win the Mountain West, they're still going to be the Group of 5 team. I don't know that that's true. I don't know that they would, even if Army lost to Notre Dame. Army and Tulane are going to play each other probably in the American Championship game, and they're both ranked. So I think Boise State would fall to about probably behind Army and Tulane if you lose to no one. Like, I guarantee you the people in the playoff have not watched 1 second of San Jose State football. They aren't going to care. They're like San Jose State's 6-3 coming in this game. They're not horrible by any means, but I mean, the loss, in my opinion, eliminates you from the playoff unless like the winner of the American has like 3 losses. So I just don't think they would jump. And then for my upset, or not potential upset, be on the watch, is Boston College at SMU.
That was my last one. So that I circled that game right away.
Like, I know Castellanos is leaving the team, entering the transfer portal.
That could be a spark. That could be a spark.
Could be a spark, and like, like SMU's been weird this year because they played in the week 0 and barely beat Nevada themselves, and they have the one close loss to BYU. But I looked at their schedule earlier, and they have they barely beat Duke. Louisville's actually a pretty good win, but they won that by 7. They have a couple of these games where they've had close games. They're not like a juggernaut or anything like that. And Boston College has kind of just been like, they're one of those teams that pulls off. It's not the 2-8 teams that you really got to worry about. It's the meddling 5-5 teams that come in and just play a great game and
the PJ Fleck teams.
Yeah, book their BBVA Compass Bowl hotel rooms after the win. So I think it could end up being a really good weekend of football.
The teams that'll be hanging out on Beale Street next to like the Graceland Museum and at the Liberty Bowl, those are the teams you have to worry about.
Yeah, exactly, because they're like, we're trying to get that bowl game before Christmas. So yeah. I honestly think it could be you might see a couple upsets this weekend. Like, it's been kind of teetering that way for a couple of weeks. I know we had the Miami one last week. BYU almost lost. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it was like an upset because I think they're a pretty good team, but South Carolina beat A&M a couple weeks ago. So, a lot of teams like part of the 12-team playoff thing too is now more than ever, teams will look at, Boston College can look at SMU and be like, let's ruin their season. Let's beat them, ruin their season. They're not going to go to the playoff. They're probably not going to go to the ACC championship. So we'll see.
No, we will see. Yeah, that's all the upsets I had. Those are the 3. Do you got any more, or should we move on?
I think we can move on. There's not a ton of
the meme matchup. Move on to the meme matchup because we have a very special meme matchup. Very special meme matchup. Zooch, let's move on to the meme matchup.
Oh yeah, I have what I think is a good one because it's hilarious.
So my meme matchup of the week. We do this every week. Could be teams. Could be teams. Could be players. Could be scenarios. This is my first scenario meme matchup of the week. And we have, for my meme matchup of the week, SEC quarterbacks versus getting chats leaked. What the heck was that this week? This is, I think the worst one, if it was real, was Carson Beck's. So people will say it was Quinn Ewers for his persistence in getting a booty pick, which, dude, bonk, horny. But Carson Beck's, if it's true that he said, I need you to run me over with your car so I can stop playing football. That is some of the most down bad stuff I've ever seen to try to get a girl. And this is coming from a guy who had a chat leaked 2 years ago. You remember this, Zooch?
Yes.
The infamous Carson Beck snap from 2 years ago. This guy is a serial Snapchatter. He needs his account deleted. He has a girlfriend now who Georgia fans have been posting the stats since he posted the picture with his girlfriend. What is it? One of the Cavender twins.
Yeah.
The stats have not been good since then. But yeah, what are with these SEC quarterbacks? If I was a mentor for these quarterbacks, I would tell them literally do not communicate with anyone you're trying to get romantically involved with through any form of texting, Snapchat,
No.
social media DM. Everything needs to be in person or old school. Give them a call. You are
You
a
need to,
quarterback at an SEC school. You just be you, and trust me, you will be fine.
they need to pull the Derek Jeter and invite people over and be like, your cell phone goes in that basket over there. You're not like posting anything. No, I like what's kind of like wild to me about it is, like you said, you were the quarterback at an SEC school. There's no reason for you to be that down bad about anyone. You should be able to pretty much date anyone in the university. Like, truly, you are the quarterback of Georgia or the quarterback of Texas. Like, and I mean, there's been more. Like, it's
The
just don't
A&M
have.
quarterback one got released. The young guy, not the Weigman. It's the oh my gosh, who is that guy? Well, it doesn't matter, but his got leaked too. It's like, what are these guys doing?
It's been. I mean, people have been coming for the SEC. The girls have been coming for the SEC quarterbacks. We had the Jackson Dart drama at the beginning of the season. Like,
Well, I
but
mean, Ole Miss
somehow
is an
he didn't even get anything leaked. It was
yeah.
just like, oh, yeah, like he cheated on me. He just never said
Also,
anything about it.
Ole Miss is just all-time scumbag university QB. They just always seem to have a scumbag. Bo Wallace, Chad Kelly, Matt Corral. You just need someone who just looks like he yells at a bouncer
He,
because he doesn't want to pay a cover.
pretty much every SEC Ole Miss quarterback, and I love them, but they look like the bully in every Disney movie ever. Like if you like, that's just what they look like. Like Dart looks that way. Matt Corral looks that way. Matt Corral looks like he would be like the bad guy in a Never Back Down movie, and I said that from the moment he took his first snap. Eli went there. Eli kind of looks like a bully sometimes. Jevin Sneed. It's it's been a long year for SEC quarterbacks, and they need to tone down the rhetoric. Like, they need to have just a group chat amongst themselves and just, have a filter to be like, should I send this to this girl?
Yeah.
No, you shouldn't be. You should never say like, I need a pick. Fine, booty. Like, like Quinn Ewers did. You don't need to be doing it. It is.
Hey,
and Carson Beck's been at it for years.
I will say, people who view Quinn Ewers' leak snap, if it's true, you already just know there's down bad guys across the country who are gonna see that and go, it's just gonna take one more, and just start like quintuple texting girls. And it just like worked for Quinn Ewers. No, Brian, it's not gonna work for you. You're an econ major at Maryland, and you live in one of the dorms. It's not working for you. Sorry, Brian. Sorry if there's a Brian who's an econ major at Maryland. That was not a direct shot at you. That was just an example that I
also
came to.
like, just know how do you just not know that as a regular guy? Don't do that. Like, to these like girls that you probably clearly followed on Instagram because you thought they were good looking. As a regular guy, don't do that. Specifically, if you are the most famous person at the university, don't do that because you know what's going to happen. Like, it's
like you said, they
stop.
have to implore. Derek Jeter can make a lot of money as an advisor. Derek Jeter needs to become an advisor, but the SEC needs to hire Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter will teach these guys how he did it. Learn from the master himself. But yes, that was my me matchup. probably my favorite one of the season so far, Zooch, and the show off. What is your meme matchup?
My meme matchup is gonna be the and it's a big game, the biggest game of the weekend. But and this is so mean, but just the visual of Kirby Smart going up against Josh Heupel is like the most SEC looking hair, attire, body shape of all time. Like it is.
Well, isn't this the classic? This is the classic. Choose your character. Peter Millar, Visor, QZ, Kirby Smart, Columbia PFG, strap around the sunglasses, camo hat, Josh Heupel. That's the living embodiment of that.
Yeah, I mean it's two very successful. It's just the whole thing is funny. Like I need to get to one of those Georgia Tennessee games because I just know the crowd is full of for years, and it's changed for Georgia now, but for years these two were like look at our recruiting class, look at this coach we hired, like we're on the up and up. And for Tennessee still a little bit, I mean they've been a lot better recently, but Georgia before Kirby Smart came, the last time they won a national title was that each team has had outside of the Kirby Smart era a combined 2 national championships over the last 50 years. So that you have the big Vol daddies, you have the barking. It is going to be, we're in for a wild ride, especially if I have a feeling that this might be a game that things get thrown on the field. It is,
the SEC's got us. What happened to being throwing stuff on the field was cool. I feel like they're doing it every week now.
Yeah, I mean it's been happening. It's not great, but some of those coaches try to ag that on. They might not act like they ag it on, but secretly they are agging it on. You got Ole Miss fans rushing the field early.
So funny.
16 seconds left on the.
Kiffin was upset.
He was. It was the presidents also, and I've realized this year, need to hire the cops who block these coaches during these field rushes from the SEC, because they are out there like Terminators. Just if you even look at the coach, you're getting thrown on the ground, and it just gets brushed under the rug. It gets brushed under the rug.
Oh my gosh, that's a great meme matchup. That was a good show. Great show. Want to thank everyone for listening. As always, make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube. Make sure you give us a follow on TikTok, follow on Instagram. Go check out some of our other accounts from the show specifically. Go check out the In the End Zone podcast. Go check out the Good Old Hockey podcast. Check over our guy Ryan and Takeover Sports, who's just doing a killer job with the Boise local sports scene. Just had a great interview with Latrell Caples. So go give that a listen and continue to watch all of our stuff on all of our platforms, whether it be the clips or the shows themselves. We really do appreciate it. It's what keeps us going. I tell you guys that every week. It's really what keeps us going is you guys watching this. But with that being said, Zooch, anything else?
Nothing else. I say it every week, but 3 weeks left in the regular season, so
let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy
Hope for some chaos.
All right. With that being said, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.